They say one decision can change your life forever. For Michael Torres, that decision came on a rain-soaked Thursday night when he almost declined a ride request from the worst part of town. The woman who slid into his back seat looked broken. Clothes torn, face bare, bleeding feet leaving marks on his floor mat. 3 other drivers had already refused her. Michael had every reason to do the same. He didn't know that this stranger, shivering in his back seat, was worth $3.8 billion. He didn't know she was running from a life that was slowly killing her. He didn't know that this 45-minute ride would lead to the greatest love story neither of them saw coming.
Quick pause. Before we continue, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? If you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit subscribe, because tomorrow's episode is absolutely mind-blowing. The rain hammered against the windshield like bullets, each drop exploding into 1,000 smaller pieces before the wipers swept them away. Michael Torres sat in his Honda Accord at the corner of 5th and Madison, watching the city blur into watercolor streaks of neon and shadow. His phone screen glowed in the darkness, 11:47 p.m. Just 13 more minutes and he'd call it a night. 3 years. 3 years of driving strangers through this city, and Michael knew every street, every shortcut, every pothole that could destroy a tire. His rating sat at a perfect 5 stars, 4,963 rides without a single complaint. People told him he was too good at this job, that he should want more. His ex-girlfriend Sarah had said the same thing before she left 6 months ago. Her final word is still echoing. "You're 34, Michael. Don't you want to be something more than just a driver?" He tried to explain that this wasn't just driving. This was paying for his mother's chemotherapy, her medications, the experimental treatment that insurance wouldn't cover. This was choosing between his own dreams and the woman who'd sacrificed everything to raise him alone after his father disappeared. But Sarah had already made up her mind. She wanted ambition. She wanted someone climbing corporate ladders, not navigating traffic. The phone buzzed. A ride request from Riverside District, the part of town where streetlights flickered and died, where Michael usually declined. The passenger rating showed only 3 stars, with a note from the previous driver, "Suspicious, possibly homeless, declined." Michael's finger hovered over the decline button. Then he sought it. 3 consecutive cancellations in the past 20 minutes. 3 different drivers had already refused this person. Something about that bothered him. He thought of his mother, of the nights she had waited in hospital lobbies, of how many people had refused to see her humanity when she couldn't afford a look put together. Against his better judgment, Michael accepted. The drive to Riverside took 12 minutes through streets that grew progressively darker. Graffiti marked the walls. Broken glass glittered in gutters. When he pulled up to the address, an alley behind a closed warehouse, Michael's instinct screamed at him to leave. But then he saw her. She emerged from the shadows like a ghost, and Michael's breath caught. Not from attraction, but from concern. The woman was young, mid-30s maybe, but looked like she had been through hell. Her business blazer, once expensive, was now torn and muddy. Her white blouse underneath was stained with something dark. No shoes, just bare feet, wrapped in what looked like torn fabric, blood seeping through. Her hair, black and soaked, hung in tangled ropes around a face devoid of makeup, revealing exhausted eyes that held something Michael couldn't quite name. Fear? Resignation? Or perhaps something deeper, a bone-deep weariness with the world. She limped toward the car, clutching a torn plastic bag to her chest. When she reached for the door handle, her hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip it. Michael did something he'd never done before. He got out of the car. "Let me help you," he said, opening the door. The woman froze, staring at him like he had just offered her the moon. You're actually going to take me?" "That's what I'm here for," Michael replied, noting how her voice contradicted everything else about her. Refined, educated, with a slight tremor that suggested tears weren't far away. She slid into the back seat without another word. Michael returned to the driver's seat and glanced at the destination she had entered, the Wellington Tower, one of the most exclusive addresses in the city's financial district. The ride would take 45 minutes, maybe an hour in this rain. The fare showed $68. The address correct? Michael asked, trying to keep doubt from his voice. The Wellington Tower and this woman seemed to exist in different universes. Yes. Her voice was barely a whisper. You know what I'm thinking. Just, please, I'll pay cash. Extra, if you want. I don't want extra, Michael said, pulling into traffic. Just making sure I get you where you need to be. In the rearview mirror, he watched her body language, hunched, protective, clutching that plastic bag like it contained her entire life. She was shivering despite the heater running full blast. Michael reached into his gym bag in the passenger seat and pulled out a clean towel, passing it back without a word. The woman stared at the towel as if she had never seen such an object. Then slowly she took it. "Thank you," she whispered, and Michael heard her voice crack. 5 minutes of silence passed, broken only by the rhythm of the wipers and the drum of rain. Then Michael made a decision. He reached into the console and pulled out his backup phone charger and a bottle of water, passing them back. "You look like you could use these." This time the woman didn't respond, but when Michael glanced in the mirror, he saw tears streaming down her face. Not sobs, just silent tears that she quickly wiped away with the towel. "I'm Michael, by the way," he offered, trying to ease whatever invisible weight pressed down on her. "Been driving for 3 years now. Best decision I ever made." A long pause. Then, "Catherine, but people call me Cat." "Nice to meet you, Cat. Must be a hell of a story behind tonight." Another pause, longer this time. "You have no idea." Something in her tone made my heart clench. He'd carried thousands of passengers, drunk college kids, business executives, new parents with screaming babies, elderly couples heading to hospitals. He had learned to read people, to sense their stories without them saying a word. But Kat was different. She wasn't drunk or high. She wasn't mentally unstable or dangerous. She was just broken. Recently, deeply, devastatingly broken. The rain intensified as they merged onto the highway. Traffic was light. Most sane people were already home. The car fell into a cocoon of sound. Rain, engine, the soft jazz Michael always played on late shifts. Usually, passengers scrolled their phones or dozed off, but Kat just stared out the window, watching the city lights blur past like falling stars. "This jazz?" Kat finally spoke, her voice steadier now. "Nina Simone?" Michael glanced in the mirror, surprised. "Yeah, Strange Fruit. Most people don't recognize it." "My father loved her. Before he—" She trailed off. Then she seemed to shake herself. "It's beautiful. Thank you for playing it." "You have good taste." "I used to." Something bitter entered her voice. "Before I forgot what good taste meant. Before everything became about numbers and strategies and winning."
Michael wanted to ask what she meant, but something told him to wait. Kat was building up to something, testing the waters to see if he was someone worth trusting. He'd learned that the best way to get someone to talk wasn't to push, it was to show them you were listening. Another 5 minutes passed, then, "Can I ask you something, Michael?" "Sure." "Why do you do this? Drive, I mean. You seem like someone who could do more." Michael smiled, without humor. "My ex-girlfriend thought the same thing. She left me because I was just a driver." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. She wasn't wrong to want more. But see, my mom, she's got stage 3 breast cancer. The treatments that might actually save her, insurance doesn't cover them. So I work. Morning shift as a warehouse supervisor, night shift doing this. Some days I work 30 hours straight. But you know what? I sleep just fine. Because I know I'm doing something that matters." In the mirror, he saw Kat's expression transform.
The weariness remained, but something else emerged. Respect, or maybe recognition. Your mother is lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. She raised me alone after my dad left, worked 3 jobs to keep me in school, never complained once. This, he gestured at the car, this is nothing compared to what she gave me. Kat turned away, but not before Michael saw fresh tears. That's beautiful, that kind of love. Everyone deserves someone who sees them that way, who loves them without conditions or expectations. Not everyone. Some of us are only loved for what we can provide, what we're worth on paper. Before Michael could respond, his GPS alerted him to an upcoming exit. They were 25 minutes into the journey now, approaching downtown. The rain had lessened to a steady drizzle, and traffic thickened as they entered the commercial district. Michael noticed a 24-hour pharmacy ahead, its lights bright in the gloom. He made a split-second decision and pulled into the parking lot. "What are you doing?" Kat asked, alarm in her voice. "Your feet," Michael said simply. "They're bleeding. Won't take but a minute." "No, you don't need to." But Michael was already out of the car, jogging through the rain toward the pharmacy entrance. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed overhead as he grabbed a basket and moved quickly through the aisles. Antiseptic wipes, gauze, medical tape, a box of waterproof bandages. He grabbed a pair of cheap slip-on shoes, size 7, hopefully close enough. At the counter, he added 2 cups of coffee and a pre-made sandwich. The total came to $47. Michael paid with his personal card, not even considering using the business account for his driving. This wasn't business. This was something else. When he returned to the car, Kat was staring at him through the window with an expression he couldn't read. He slid back into the driver's seat and passed everything back. The supplies, the coffee, the sandwich. "I don't understand," Kat said, her voice shaking. "Why would you do this? You don't know me. I could be anyone." "That's exactly why," Michael replied, starting the car again. "Because you could be anyone. You could be my mom, stranded somewhere hoping someone sees her as human and not just invisible." Kat didn't respond, but as Michael pulled back onto the road, he heard her unwrapping the supplies, heard the rustle of bandages, the snap of the coffee lid, and then so quietly he almost missed it. "Thank you. No one has treated me like this in... I can't remember how long." They drove in silence for another 10 minutes, while Kat doctored her feet and sipped the coffee. Michael gave her space, understanding that sometimes silence was its own form of kindness. The city transformed around them as they entered the financial district, towers of glass and steel reaching towards the sky, their windows dark except for the occasional late-night office. This was the world of power and money, where deals worth billions happened over handshakes and 3 martini lunches. Michael had driven through here thousands of times, but always felt like an outsider looking in. These buildings represented everything my ex-girlfriend wanted, everything society said mattered. But sitting here now, with this strange, intense woman who'd somehow fallen from that world into his backseat, Michael wondered if maybe all that glass and steel was just a very pretty prison. "Michael?" Kat's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Can I ask you something else?" "Sure." "If you had one chance to completely change your life, to have everything you've ever wanted, would you take it?" Michael considered this carefully. "Depends. Would I have to leave behind the people I love? My mom, my few real friends? Maybe." "Then no. Success without people who genuinely care about you, that's just lonely." A long pause. Then, "That's the smartest thing anyone said to me in 15 years. Before Michael could ask what she meant, Kat spoke again, and this time her voice carried a weight that made him listen carefully. "I'm going to tell you something, Michael, and I'm trusting you because you've shown me more humanity in 30 minutes than most people have in years. That building we're going to, the Wellington Tower, I own that building. I own the entire building and the company inside it, and about 1,500 stores across the world. My name is Catherine Wellington. And tonight, I ran from a charity gala where I was being auctioned off like a prize horse to the highest bidder.
Michael's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Catherine Wellington. He'd seen her name in business magazines, heard it on financial news reports. One of the youngest self-made billionaires in the country, net worth north of $3 billion. And she was sitting in his backseat, bleeding and broken. "I don't know why I'm telling you this," Kat continued. "Maybe because you're a stranger and I'll never see you again. Maybe because you're the first person in years who's treated me like a human being instead of a walking bank account. But I'm tired, Michael. Tired of being Catherine Wellington, CEO, billionaire, ice queen. For 30 years, I've built and fought and clawed my way up, and tonight, standing in that ballroom wearing a dress that cost more than most people make in a year, listening to men discuss which one of them would win me for a business merger, I just ran. I took off my shoes, grabbed my emergency cash from my office, and I ran." The GPS showed 5 minutes to destination. 5 minutes before the strange, intense interlude would end and Kat would step back into her gilded cage. Michael found himself wishing for traffic, for construction, for anything that might make this ride last longer. "For what it's worth," Michael said quietly, "I don't think you're an ice queen. I think you're someone who's been forced to freeze parts of herself just to survive. But underneath, you're still human, still someone who deserves to be seen and valued for more than your bank balance." In the mirror, Kat's face crumpled. She covered her mouth with her hand, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Michael wanted to pull over, to offer more comfort, but he sensed he was overstepping. So he just drove, letting her cry, letting the music wash over them both.
By the time they pulled up to the Wellington Tower, Kat had composed herself. The building rose above them like a monument to ambition, 60 floors of glass and steel, each window a story of success. Security guards stood at attention in the lobby, visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows. This was her world, a world that seemed galaxies away from Michael's Honda Accord. Kat pulled out a stack of cash, far more than the meter showed, for the ride, and the supplies, and the kindness. "The meter says $65, Michael said, looking at what had to be at least $300 in her hand. "And kindness is priceless. Please, take it." Michael accepted the money, but more because he sensed Kat needed him to than because he wanted it. They looked at each other through the rearview mirror, really looked for the first time. Her eyes were red from crying, makeupless, vulnerable. But they were also beautiful, he realized. Not beautiful in the way magazine covers portrayed beauty, but beautiful in their humanity, their depth, their pain. "Thank you," Kat said, her hand on the door handle, "for seeing me, the real me." "Thank you for trusting me with her," Michael replied. Kat smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her all night. It transformed her face, making her look younger, less burdened. Then she opened the door and stepped out into the night. Michael watched as she limped toward the entrance in her cheap slip-on shoes and torn clothes. The security guard's eyes widened in shock, but they immediately snapped to attention, opening the doors with practiced efficiency. "Ms. Wettington, we've been worried." The doors closed, swallowing her back into that world of power and money. Michael sat there for a long moment, staring at the building, wondering if he just imagined the whole thing. Then he looked at the cash in his hand, real enough, and the empty back seat where a broken billionaire had cried and bled and revealed himself to a stranger. He pulled away from the curb, pointing his car toward home. But something had shifted inside him. For 3 years he'd driven through the city thinking he understood it. Tonight he'd learned that the brightest towers could be the loneliest prisons, that wealth and success could leave someone more broken than poverty ever could. That sometimes the most valuable thing you could offer someone was not opportunity or advancement, but simple, uncomplicated human kindness. Michael didn't expect to see Catherine Wellington again. Their worlds had touched for 45 minutes, created something real and honest, and now would separate forever. That was okay. Some connections weren't meant to last. They were meant to teach you something about yourself, about what mattered. He just wished he could stop thinking about her eyes in the rearview mirror, about the way she'd looked at him when he'd bought her coffee and bandages, about the sound of her voice when she'd said, "Thank you for seeing me." Michael turned onto his street, parking in front of the small apartment he shared with his mother. Inside, he could see the lights still on in her room. She always waited up, despite the late hour, despite how tired the treatments made her. He grabbed his keys and the cash Kat had given him, already planning how he'd use it for next month's medication costs. But as he walked to the door, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over, that somehow, impossibly, his life and Kat's would intersect again. He had no idea how right he was, or how completely that intersection would change everything.
Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
3 days. For 3 days, Michael couldn't stop thinking about Catherine Wellington. He found himself watching for her face in crowds, searching for news stories about mysterious billionaire disappearances, checking his phone compulsively in case she somehow found his number. He felt ridiculous, like a teenager with a crush, except this wasn't attraction in any simple sense. It was something deeper, more unsettling. Recognition, maybe. Like he'd glimpsed something in Kat that mirrored something in himself. His mother noticed. On Saturday morning, as Michael prepared her medications, Maria Torres studied her son with the particular intensity only mothers possess. "You've been different since Thursday night," she said, her voice still strong despite the cancer trying to weaken it. "Something happened." Michael tried to deflect. "Just tired, Mom. Long shift." Michael Antonio Torres. She used his full name, which meant she wasn't buying it. "I raised you for 34 years. I know every face you make, every tone of voice. You met someone." Michael paused, pill organizer in hand. Should he tell her? It seemed absurd. He'd driven a stranger across town, and now he couldn't stop thinking about it. But his mother had always been his confidant, the one person who never judged. So he told her everything. The pickup in Riverside, Kat's appearance, the conversation, the revelation about who she was. His mother listened without interrupting, her dark eyes never leaving his face. When he finished, Maria was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that made Michael's heart clench. "That woman saw something in you, mijo, something real and good, and you saw something in her too. That doesn't happen often in this life. But she's a billionaire, Mom. We live in different universes." Maria smiled, the kind of smile that carried years of wisdom. "Money doesn't make universes different, mijo. Loneliness does. And from what you described, that woman is just as lonely as you've been since Sarah left." Michael wanted to argue, but couldn't, because his mother was right. He had been lonely. Not for lack of people around him, but for lack of connection. He had had plenty of casual conversations, friendly interactions, even a few dates that went nowhere, but he hadn't felt seen, truly seen since his breakup, until Thursday night, when a broken billionaire had looked at him through a rear-view mirror and somehow understood him better than people who'd known him for years. "Doesn't matter anyway," Michael said, helping his mother to her feet for her daily walk around the apartment. His phone rang before his mother could respond. Unknown number. Michael answered, expecting a spam call. "Is this Michael Torres?" The voice was female, young, professionally crisp. "This is Samantha Reed, personal assistant to Ms. Catherine Wellington. Ms. Wellington would like to request a meeting with you. Would Monday at 2 p.m. work with your schedule?" Michael nearly dropped the phone. His mother raised her eyebrows, mouthing, "Who is it?" I work on Monday. I have a shift at the warehouse from 8 to 4. Ms. Wellington can accommodate your schedule. Would 5 p.m. be better?" Yes, 5 would work. Can I ask what this is about?" "Ms. Wellington will explain everything when you arrive. The address is Wellington Tower, 60th floor. Security will be expecting you. Thank you, Mr. Torres." The line went dead. Michael stared at his phone like it had transformed into something alien.
That was her, wasn't it? His mother's eyes gleamed. The billionaire? Her assistant. She wants to meet. Monday at 5. Then you'd better find something nice to wear, mijo. The weekend passed in a blur of anxiety and speculation. Michael tried to focus on work, on his mother's care, on normal life, but his mind kept returning to Monday. Why did Kat want to see him? Was there a problem with the ride? Had he somehow violated some protocol by buying her supplies? Was she going to offer him money, treating their encounter like a transaction? By Monday afternoon, Michael was a wreck. He had called in sick to his evening Uber shift, something he never did, and borrowed a dress shirt and tie from his neighbor. The shirt was slightly too large, the tie slightly too narrow, but it was the best he could do. At 4:30 p.m., he stood in front of the mirror in his mother's room, trying to knot the tie properly. "You look handsome," Maria said from her chair. "But Michael, remember who you are. Don't let that building or all that money make you feel smaller. You gave that woman something more valuable than anything money can buy. Don't forget that." Michael kissed his mother's forehead, grabbed his keys, and headed out into the city. The drive to Wellington Tower took 25 minutes. In every minute, Michael's anxiety ratcheted up higher. He parked in the visitor's lot, staring up at the building that had swallowed Kat 3 nights ago. In daylight, it was even more impressive. All glass and modern architecture, the kind of building that made statements about power and success. The lobby was 3 stories of marble and steel, with a reception desk that looked like it belonged in a museum. Michael approached nervously, giving his name to the security guard. The man checked his computer, nodded, and directed him to a private elevator. 60th floor. Ms. Wellington will meet you there. The elevator was all mirrors and soft lighting, rising so smoothly Michael barely felt the motion. Floor numbers ticked upward on a digital display. 20, 35, 50, 60. When the doors opened, Michael stepped into a world that redefined luxury. The entire floor was open plan, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering 360-degree views of the city. Modern art hung on the walls. The furniture looked like it cost more than my car. A woman in her late 20s approached, blonde, perfectly dressed in a designer's suit, tablet in hand. "Mr. Torres, I'm Samantha Reed. Thank you for coming, if you'll follow me." Samantha led him through the office space, past cubicles where people worked quietly, past conference rooms with glass walls towards a set of double doors at the far end. She knocked twice, then opened them.
"Miss Wellington, Mr. Torres is here." "Thank you, Samantha. That will be all." Michael stepped through the doors, and they closed behind him with a soft click. He found himself in an office that was somehow both massive and intimate. A corner office with windows on 2 sides, a desk that looked hand-carved, bookshelves filled with what appeared to be first editions. And standing by the window, backlit by the afternoon sun, was Kat. Except she wasn't Kat anymore. Or rather, she was Kat transformed. Her hair was pulled back in an elegant twist. She wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Michael made in 6 months. Makeup was subtle but professionally applied. She looked powerful, composed, every inch the billionaire CEO. But when she turned to face him, Michael saw the same eyes, the same depth, the same person who'd cried in his back seat. "Michael." Her voice was warm, genuine. "Thank you for coming. I know this must seem strange." "Strange is one word for it," Michael admitted, then immediately wondered if that was too casual. "Miss Wellington, Kat, please. When it's just us, call me Kat." She gestured to a sitting area. 2 leather chairs facing each other across a coffee table. Michael sat, acutely aware of how out of place he felt. Kat poured 2 glasses of water from a crystal decanter and sat across from him. "I'm going to be direct with you, Michael, because Thursday night taught me that you appreciate honesty. I didn't call you here just to thank you, though I do want to do that. What you did for me, the way you treated me, it meant more than you can possibly know." "You don't need to thank me for basic human decency," Michael said. Kat smiled. "See, that's exactly what I mean. Most people would have accepted the gratitude, maybe angled for more. You just deflect." She leaned forward slightly. "But there's another reason I asked you here. I need to explain something about Thursday night, and I need your help." "My help?"
I'm just a driver. You're not just anything, Michael. You're someone who saw me, really saw me when I was at my lowest. Someone who showed me kindness without expecting anything in return. That's incredibly rare, and it's exactly what I need right now. Kat stood and walked back to the window, her silhouette outlined against the city skyline. Do you know why I ran from that gala, Michael? It wasn't just the arranged merger, though that was the catalyst. I ran because I've spent 15 years building this empire, and somewhere along the way, I lost myself completely. I became Catherine Wellington, CEO, a walking brand, a collection of quarterly reports and stock prices and business strategies. I haven't had a genuine human connection in, God, I don't even know how long. She turned to face me. Thursday night, sitting in your car, drinking that terrible coffee you bought me, wearing those cheap shoes, I felt more like myself than I have in a decade. And I realized something. I don't want to live the rest of my life like this, like a prisoner in a golden cage. So, what does that have to do with me? Michael asked, genuinely confused. I want to change how my company operates, how we treat employees, how we interact with customers, how we measure success. I want to put humanity back into Wellington Enterprises, but I can't do that alone. And I can't do it with people who've been in this world too long to remember what actual humanity looks like. Pause. I want to offer you a position. Director of Customer Experience and Employee Relations. 6-figure salary, full benefits, including healthcare for your mother, equity package. Michael's brain short-circuited. He had expected many things from this meeting, but not this. What? Kat, I'm a warehouse supervisor and an Uber driver. I don't have an MBA or business experience or... You have something better. You have integrity. You have empathy. You understand what it means to struggle, to work hard, to put others before yourself. That's what I need. Not another business school graduate who can crunch numbers but has never actually connected with regular people. This is insane, Michael said, standing up. You can't offer someone a position like that based on one car ride. Can't I? It's my company. But I'm not qualified. You're more qualified than you think. And you'd be surprised how much of business is just treating people like human beings, something you're naturally excellent at. Kat moved closer. Michael, I'm not asking you to become someone you're not. I'm asking you to bring who you are into a world that desperately needs it. Michael's head spun. This had to be a dream, or a joke, or some kind of bizarre reality show. People like him didn't get offered jobs like this. This was the kind of opportunity that happened to people with connections, with degrees, with luck he never had. But looking at Kat's face, he saw only sincerity. And something else. Hope, maybe. Like she needed him to say yes for reasons that went beyond business. Can I think about it? Michael asked. Of course. Take whatever time you need. But Michael, Kat's voice softened, I'm not doing this as charity. I genuinely believe you could change how this company operates, how we treat the thousands of people who work for us. And selfishly, I'm hoping you might help me remember how to be human again. Before Michael could respond, Samantha knocked and entered. Miss Wellington? I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have a problem. There has been a complaint filed with Uber about Mr. Torres. What? Michael and Kat spoke simultaneously. Samantha handed Kat a tablet. A supervisor reported him for unauthorized stops and providing personal items to passengers. The report says it violates Uber's policy and recommends suspension pending investigation. Michael felt his stomach drop. The stop at pharmacy. Of course someone had flagged it. He'd known it was against the rules but hadn't cared in the moment. This is because of me, Kat said quietly, reading the report. Because you stopped to help me. She looked up, and Michael saw determination replace the softness in her eyes. Samantha, get me Tom Reeves on the phone, now. Tom Reeves from Uber? Samantha asked, surprised. The regional director? No, Tom Reeves, the board member. I want him on the phone in 5 minutes. While Samantha made the call, Kat turned to Michael. This isn't going to stand. You stopped to help someone in need. That's not a violation. That's exemplary service. And if Uber doesn't see it that way, they're going to learn very quickly that I have a long memory and significant leverage. Kat, you don't have to...
Yes, I do. You helped me when you had no reason to, when it might cost you. Now I'm helping you. That's what decent people do for each other, right? 10 minutes later, Michael sat in stunned silence as Kat spoke with Tom Reeves on the speakerphone. She was professional, but firm, explaining the situation, making it clear that not only should the complaint be withdrawn, but that Michael should be commended for his service.
Tom, Wellington Enterprises moves billions of dollars through various logistics partnerships every year. I'd hate to have to reconsider those relationships because one of your supervisors can't recognize extraordinary customer service when they see it. There was a long pause on the line. Then, Ms. Wellington, I apologize for the confusion. I'll personally ensure Mr. Torres' record is cleared and that he receives a commendation. We value his service highly. I'm glad to hear it. Thank you, Tom. After the call ended, Kat turned to Michael with a slight smile. See? That's not charity. That's ensuring someone who deserves recognition gets it. Michael didn't know what to say. In the span of 30 minutes, his entire world had tilted sideways. A job offer that could change his life? A billionaire who'd just gone to bat for him against a massive corporation. And underneath it all, this strange, undeniable connection he felt with the woman sitting across from him. Why are you really doing this? Michael asked quietly. All of it. The job offer, the call to Uber. Why? Kat was silent for a long moment. Then she stood and walked to her desk, returning with a framed photo. It showed a young girl, maybe 8 years old, sitting on the shoulders of a man in work clothes. Both were laughing, covered in what looked like paint. That's my father, Kat said softly. David Wellington. He was a contractor, built houses with his hands. We weren't rich, but we were happy. He used to tell me that success without kindness was just cruelty with better PR. She set the photo down. He died when I was 12. After that, I became obsessed with proving myself, with building something that would make him proud. But somewhere along the way, I forgot the kindness part. I became everything I swore I wouldn't be. She looked at me, and I saw tears threatening in her eyes. Thursday night, you reminded me of my father, of what he would have done, how he would have treated a stranger in need. And I realized I've spent 20 years trying to honor his memory by building an empire, but I dishonored him by forgetting his most important lesson. Michael's throat tightened. He understood now. This wasn't about business or charity or even gratitude. This was about Kat trying to find her way back to herself, to the person she'd been before the world told her that kindness was weakness and humanity was inefficient. I need to talk to my mom before I make any decisions. She's my compass, you know? She sounds wonderful. I'd love to meet her someday if you're willing. She'd probably adopt you and start planning our wedding, Michael joked, then immediately regretted it as his face flushed. I mean, that came out wrong. I wasn't suggesting... I know what you meant, but I thought I saw the slightest hint of a blush on her cheeks, too. Take your time. Talk to your mom. The offer stands whenever you're ready. As Michael stood to leave, Kat touched his arm. The contact was brief, professional, but Michael felt electricity run through him. Thank you, Michael, for a Thursday night, for treating me like a person instead of a persona. You have no idea how much I needed that. Thank you for trusting me, Michael replied. In the elevator down, Michael's mind raced. The job offer alone was life-changing, more money than he'd ever dreamed of, benefits that would save his mother, opportunities to actually make a difference. But beneath all that, something else stirred, something he wasn't quite ready to name. He thought about the way Kat's eyes had softened when she talked about her father, the vulnerability she'd shown, the trust, the way his heart had skipped when she'd touched his arm. This wasn't just about business or charity or even gratitude. This was about Kat trying to find her way back to herself, to the person she'd been before the world told her that kindness was weakness and humanity was inefficient. I need to talk to my mom before I make any decisions. She's my compass, you know?
She sounds wonderful. I'd love to meet her someday if you're willing. She'd probably adopt you and start planning our wedding. Michael joked, then immediately regretted it as his face flushed. I mean, that came out wrong. I wasn't suggesting. I know what you meant. Take your time. Talk to your mom. The offer stands whenever you're ready. As Michael stood to leave, Kat touched his arm. The contact was brief, professional, but Michael felt electricity run through him. Thank you, Michael, for Thursday night, for treating me like a person instead of a persona. You have no idea how much I needed that. Thank you for trusting me, Michael replied. In the elevator down, Michael's mind raced. The job offer alone was life-changing, more money than he'd ever dreamed of, benefits that would save his mother, opportunities to actually make a difference. But beneath all that, something else stirred, something he wasn't quite ready to name. He thought about the way Kat's eyes had softened when she talked about her father, the vulnerabilities she'd shown, the trust, the way his heart had skipped when she'd touched his arm. This wasn't just about a job. This was about two people who'd found something real in the most unlikely of circumstances. Michael drove home in a daze, barely noticing the traffic. When he walked through his apartment door, his mother looked up from her book, took one look at his face, and said, "Sit down, mijo. Tell me everything."
Maria Torres listened without interrupting as Michael described the meeting, the job offer, the phone call with Uber's board member. When he finished, she was quiet for so long that Michael worried he'd overwhelmed her. "Mom, what do you think?" "I think," Maria said slowly, "that this woman sees something special in you. Something I've always known was there, but that you've never believed about yourself." She reached for Michael's hand. "But I also think there's something you're not saying, something about how you feel about her." Michael opened his mouth to deny it, then stopped. He couldn't lie to his mother. "I don't know what I feel, Mom. It's crazy. We've spent less than an hour together, but there's this connection, like she understands parts of me that I've never shown anyone, and I think I see parts of her that she keeps hidden from the world. That's not crazy, mijo. That's rare, but it's also complicated." Maria's expression turned serious. "She's a billionaire. You're still figuring out who you are. If you take this job, people will talk. They'll say you're using her or she's using you. They'll question every motive, every decision." "I know. And if there's something more between you two, something romantic, it gets even more complicated. Power dynamics, workplace ethics, the constant scrutiny." She squeezed his hand. "I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying go into it with your eyes open. Know what you're risking." Michael spent the next 2 days wrestling with the decision. He called Samantha and asked for time to think. She graciously agreed to give him until Friday. He worked his warehouse shift on automatic pilot, drove his Uber routes without really seeing the passengers. His mind kept returning to Kat's office, to the way she looked at him, to the possibility of a life completely different from everything he'd known. On Wednesday evening, as Michael was preparing dinner for his mother, his phone rang. Unknown number again. His heart jumped. Was it Kat? Michael Torres. The voice was male, older, with an edge that immediately put Michael on guard. "Yes?" "This is Richard Sutherland. I'm on the board of directors for Wellington Enterprises. I think we need to talk." "About what?" "About your arrangement with Ms. Wellington. I'd like to buy you coffee tomorrow morning if you're available. There are some things you should know before you make any decisions." Everything in Michael's gut screamed that this was a trap, but curiosity and a need to understand what he was getting into won out. "Okay, where and when?" The next morning, Michael found himself in an upscale coffee shop in the financial district, sitting across from a man in his 60s who wore a suit that probably cost more than Michael's monthly rent. Richard Sutherland had silver hair, sharp eyes, and the bearing of someone accustomed to getting exactly what he wanted. "Thank you for meeting me. May I call you Michael?" "Sure." "I'll be direct. Catherine Wellington is making a mistake with you, and I think you're smart enough to see that. She's offering you a high-level position based on a single interaction. That's not business, that's emotion. And emotion in business is dangerous." What's your point, Mr. Sutherland? My point is that Catherine is going through something, a crisis perhaps. She's been under enormous pressure. The board has been pushing for a merger with Hartman Industries. Marcus Hartman is a solid choice, good financials, compatible vision, but Catherine has been resisting, and her behavior lately has been erratic. You mean running from a gala where she was being treated like a commodity? Richard's eyes narrowed. I see she's told you her version of events. Let me give you another perspective. We're not treating her like a commodity. We're trying to secure the future of a company that employs 15,000 people. Sometimes leaders have to make personal sacrifices for the greater good. And marrying someone for a business deal is a sacrifice she should make? Marriage? Richard looked genuinely surprised. No one said anything about marriage. The merger would simply benefit from a closer relationship between the CEOs. If that developed into something personal, so be it. But we're not forcing anything. Michael didn't believe that for a second, but he let Richard continue. Here's what concerns me, Michael. Catherine meets you, a kind man, in a vulnerable moment for her, and suddenly she's offering you a position you're not qualified for. She's making impulsive decisions that could affect the entire company. Do you see how that might worry those of us responsible for Wellington Enterprises' future? What I see is a woman who spent 15 years building something incredible, and who's now asking questions about what success actually means. That doesn't sound erratic to me. That sounds like wisdom. Richard's expression hardened. You're out of your depth here, son. This world, the pressures, the stakes, the scrutiny, it will eat someone like you alive. And when that happens, when you realize you can't handle it, Catherine will be hurt. Her leadership will be questioned even more. The company will suffer. So what do you want from me? Turn down her offer. Walk away. Do it kindly, professionally, but do it. I'll make it worth your while. $200,000 deposited in your account today. Use it for your mother's treatment, for whatever you need. Just step back and let Catherine focus on what she's built instead of being distracted by whatever this is.
Michael stood up. I'm not for sale, Mr. Sutherland, and neither is Kat. Think carefully before you reject this, Michael, because if you take that job, I promise you'll face scrutiny like you've never imagined. Every decision, every interaction, every dollar you spend will be questioned. Your background will be examined. Your personal life will become public. Can you handle that? Can your mother? The mention of his mother felt like a threat. Michael leaned forward, keeping his voice level but firm. If you go anywhere near my mother, I'll make sure Kat knows exactly the kind of people she has on her board. That sounds like a threat. That's a promise. Michael turned and walked out, his heart pounding. He made it 2 blocks before his hands started shaking. That afternoon, Michael called Samantha and asked if he could speak with Kat urgently. Within an hour, he was back in her office telling her everything about the meeting with Richard Sutherland. Kat's face went pale as he spoke, then flushed with anger. He offered you money to walk away? $200,000. That son of a... Kat stopped herself, took a deep breath. I'm sorry, Michael. Richard has always been problematic, but this crosses a line, a major line. He also implied that offering me this job is proof you're having some kind of breakdown. Kat laughed, but it was bitter. Of course he did, because in their world, caring about something other than profit margins is insanity. She walked to the window, staring out of the city. This is what I've been dealing with for months. The board thinks I'm being difficult because I won't roll over for Marcus Hartman's merger proposal. They don't understand that I'm not a piece in their business chess game. Who's Marcus Hartman? A younger, more aggressive version of Richard Sutherland. He built Hartman Industries through acquisitions and hostile takeovers. Very successful, very ruthless. And apparently, according to the board, my perfect match. He introduced us 6 months ago. He made it clear from day one that he was interested in more than a business relationship. When I told him I wasn't interested, he went to the board with the merger proposal instead.
Make Wellington Enterprises dependent on Hartman Industries, and suddenly I have to play nice. That's manipulation. That's business, according to them. Kat sat down heavily in her chair. Michael, I need to be honest with you. If you take this job, you're walking into a war zone. Richard won't be the only one who questions your qualifications, your motives, my judgment. It will be constant, exhausting, and potentially destructive. If you want to walk away, I understand. I really do. Michael had spent 2 days considering this decision from every angle. His mother's warning, his own doubts, the practical concerns, but Richard Sutherland's attempt to buy him off had clarified something important. This wasn't just about a job, or about money, or even about helping Kat. This was about standing up to people who thought everything and everyone could be bought, manipulated, or controlled. I want the job, Michael said, not because you're offering it, but because I believe in what you're trying to do, and because people like Richard Sutherland need to learn that not everyone can be bought. Kat's eyes widened. Are you sure? Because once you commit, it's going to get ugly. I've been poor my entire life. I've worked 3 jobs at once. I've watched my mother fight cancer with grace and dignity. I think I can handle some rich people being judgmental. For the first time since he had arrived, Kat smiled. A real, genuine smile that lit up her entire face. Okay then, welcome to Wellington Enterprises, Director Torres. She extended her hand. Michael shook it, and the touch lingered just a moment longer than professional. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Acknowledgement, maybe, of this growing connection neither could quite name yet. There's one more thing, Kat said, pulling her hand back reluctantly. Marcus Hartman, he's asked to meet with me tomorrow night, a business dinner allegedly, to discuss the merger terms. I've put him off for weeks, but the board is insisting I at least hear him out. And you don't want to go? I don't want to go alone, Kat corrected, which is where you come in. As my new director of employee relations, it would be entirely appropriate for you to attend high-level business dinners. You'd be there as a colleague, nothing more, but you'd also be there as support. I understood what she was really asking. You want a buffer, someone who's on your side. I want someone who sees me as Kat, not Catherine Wellington, the acquisition target. Is that too much to ask? What time should I be ready? Relief flooded Kat's face. 7 p.m. I'll send a car for you. And Michael, thank you. For everything. For believing in this. For believing in me. You make it easy, Michael said. And meant it. That evening, Michael told his mother everything. The job acceptance, Richard Sutherland's interference, the upcoming dinner with Marcus Hartman. Maria listened with growing concern. Mijillo, this is moving very fast. Are you sure you know what you're doing? No, Michael admitted, but I'm sure I want to try. And Mom, the benefits package Kat's offering includes experimental cancer treatments, the ones your insurance won't cover. Maria's eyes filled with tears. Michael, you can't take a job just for me. I'm not. I'm taking it because I believe in what Kat is trying to do and because I think I can actually help. Your treatment is a bonus, an amazing, life-changing bonus. Maria pulled her son into a hug. Mijo, just promise me something. Promise me you'll protect your heart because I've seen how you look when you talk about her. And I've seen this story before. The working class boy and the wealthy woman, it doesn't always end well. I know, Mom. I'll be careful. But even as he said it, Michael wondered if careful was possible anymore. Every conversation with Kat drew him deeper. Every shared glance, every moment of understanding she showed him, it all pulled him towards something he knew was dangerous, but couldn't seem to resist. The next evening, a black car arrived at Michael's apartment at 6:45 p.m. He had bought a new suit with some of the tip money Kat had given him. Nothing expensive, but decent enough that he wouldn't embarrass her. His mother fussed over his appearance, adjusting his tie 3 times before finally declaring him presentable. The drive took 30 minutes, ending at one of the city's most exclusive restaurants, the kind of place Michael had passed 1,000 times but never imagined entering.
The maitre d' led him through a dining room of crystal chandeliers and white tablecloths to a private room in the back. Kat was already there, and Michael's breath caught. She wore a deep blue dress that somehow managed to be both elegant and understated. Her hair down in waves around her shoulders. She looked beautiful, but more than that, she looked nervous. When she saw Michael, her face relaxed into a genuine smile. "You look great," she said, standing to greet him.
"You look incredible," Michael replied, then immediately felt awkward. "I mean, professional. You look very professional." Kat laughed. "It's okay, Michael. You can compliment me. We're friends, right?" Friends. The word should have felt safe, but instead, it felt inadequate. Still, Michael nodded. "Right, friends." Before they could say more, the door opened and Marcus Hartman entered. He was everything Richard Sutherland had promised, younger than Michael expected, maybe 40, with the kind of polished good looks that came from expensive grooming and regular workouts. His suit was impeccable, his smile practiced, but his eyes, when they landed on Kat, held a possessiveness that made Michael's jaw tighten. "Catherine," Marcus said warmly, moving to kiss her cheek. Kat turned at the last second, making it land awkwardly near her ear. "You look beautiful, as always. And you brought company." "Marcus, this is Michael Torres, my new Director of Customer Experience and Employee Relations." "Michael, Marcus Hartman, CEO of Hartman Industries." Marcus's handshake was too firm, too long, his eyes assessing Michael like a competitor evaluating an opponent. "Director, that's quite a promotion for someone with your background. Catherine always did have a soft spot for charity cases." "Michael earned his position," Kat said sharply. "Shall we sit?" The dinner that followed was one of the most uncomfortable experiences of Michael's life. Marcus dominated the conversation, talking about the merger in terms that made it sound inevitable. He name-dropped constantly, referenced deals Michael had never heard of, used business jargon like a weapon to exclude Michael from the conversation. But every few minutes, Kat would turn to Michael, bringing him into the discussion, asking his opinion on customer relations or employee morale. Each time, Marcus's smile would tighten slightly. "I have to say, Catherine, this opposition to the merger is becoming problematic. The board is concerned about your judgment lately. First you disappear from the charity gala, then you start making impulsive hiring decisions." He glanced at Michael. "It's starting to look like you're not thinking clearly." "My thinking is perfectly clear," Kat replied coolly. "What's unclear is why the board thinks I need to merge my company with yours to remain successful. Wellington Enterprises has grown 20% year over year for the past decade. We are financially solid, strategically sound. This merger benefits Hartman Industries far more than it benefits us. It benefits us both, particularly if we can present a united front, which is why I've been thinking, perhaps we should stop dancing around the real issue here. This could be about more than just business, Catherine. We could build something together, professional and personal." Kat pulled her hand back. "I'm not interested in mixing business and personal, Marcus. I thought I had made that clear." "Because of him," he nodded toward Michael. "Come on, Catherine. Do you really think an Uber driver turned director is appropriate for someone in your position? The media would have a heyday." "Mr. Hartman, Ms. Wellington's personal life is none of your business, and neither is her hiring decisions." Marcus turned to him with a predatory smile. "Touching how you defend her. Tell me, Michael, how much is she paying you? 6 figures? More? Must be nice, going from driving a car to a corner office based on one good deed." "That's enough," Kat said, her voice like ice. "This dinner is over." "Catherine, I'm just being realistic. You're being insulting to me and to my colleague. We're leaving." Kat stood, and Michael immediately stood with her. Marcus remained seated, his expression hardening. "Walk out now, and the board will hear about this, about your instability, about your poor judgment, about your inappropriate relationship with an employee." "Let them hear whatever you want. The truth is, I built Wellington Enterprises from nothing, and I'm not going to hand it over to someone who treats people like commodities. The merger is dead, Marcus. Tell the board whatever you'd like. I'm done playing their games." She turned and walked out, Michael following. In the restaurant's lobby, Kat's hands were shaking as she handed her valet ticket to the attendant. Michael gently took her elbow.
You okay? No, Cat said honestly. But I will be. Thank you for being there, for standing up for me. Always, Michael said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. The valet brought Cat's car, a sleek black Tesla. She climbed in, then rolled down the window. Michael, would you mind coming with me? I don't want to be alone right now. Michael didn't hesitate. He climbed into the passenger seat, and Cat pulled into traffic. For a while, they drove in silence. Then Cat spoke, her voice quiet. He was right about one thing. The board is going to come after me now. They'll say I'm being emotional, irrational. They'll try to force me out. Can they do that? I still own 51%. They can't remove me, but they can make my life hell. And they'll definitely come after you. Let them. I'm not going anywhere. Cat lanked with him, and something in her expression shifted. Why? Why are you doing this really? The job, the dinner, all of it. You could have walked away a dozen times by now. Michael thought about lying, about giving some safe professional answer, but he was tired of hiding. Because when I'm with you, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, and because I think you feel the same way. Cat pulled the car over abruptly, parking on a side street. She turned to face him, her eyes searching his face. Michael, if we go down this road, if this becomes something more than professional, it's going to get complicated. More complicated than anything with Marcus or the board. I know. People will say terrible things about you, about me, about us. I know. So why? Because feeling something real is worth fighting for. My whole life I've played it safe. I've done what was expected, what was responsible, what was smart. And I've been lonely. Maybe not alone, but lonely. Until I met you. Cat's eyes glistened with unshed tears. I've been lonely too. For so long, I forgot what it felt like to connect with someone, to be seen. They sat there in the darkness, the city lights reflecting off the windshield, and something fundamental shifted between them. An acknowledgement, an acceptance of what had been building since that rainy night when a broken billionaire climbed into the backseat of an Uber. I don't know how to do this, Cat whispered. I don't know how to have a real relationship. I'm broken in ways you don't even know yet. Then we'll figure it out together, Michael said, reaching for her hand. I'm pretty broken too.
Cat laughed through her tears, and then, slowly, inevitably, they leaned toward each other. The kiss was soft, tentative, carrying all the weight of possibility and risk and the terrifying beauty of choosing connection despite every rational reason not to. When they pulled apart, Cat rested her forehead against Michael's. What have we done? Something either incredibly stupid or incredibly right. Probably both. Definitely both, Cat agreed. Then she smiled, that real, unguarded smile that made Michael's heart skip. Want to come up? My place is 2 blocks from here. We should probably talk about what happens next. That sounds wise. Since when have we been wise? Fair point. Cat drove them to Wellington Tower, and they took the private elevator to the 60th floor, but instead of her office, they went higher, to the 65th floor penthouse that served as her apartment. It was stunning, floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture, art that probably belonged in museums, but it also felt oddly impersonal, like a hotel suite rather than a home. I know, Cat said, seeing Michael's expression. It's not very lived in. I don't actually spend much time here. I'm usually working. When was the last time you had a day off? Cat thought about it. Honestly, I can't remember. Years, maybe? That's not sustainable, Cat. I know. That's why I need someone to help me rebuild this company into something more human. Someone like you. But also someone who might help me rebuild myself into someone more human, too. They talked for hours, sitting on her couch as the city lights twinkled below. They talked about fears and hopes and childhoods, about her father and his mother, about the pressures of her world and the struggles of his. And somewhere in those hours, they crossed from colleagues to friends to something neither could quite name, but both could feel. It was 3 a.m. when Michael finally said he should go. Cat drove him home, neither wanting the night to end. At his apartment building, Cat turned to him. Michael,
Whatever happens next, with the board, with Marcus, with the media, I want you to know this is real for me. You're real for me. The first real thing I've had in 15 years. You're real for me too. The first time I've felt truly seen since maybe ever. They kissed again, longer this time, both knowing they were stepping off a cliff into unknown territory. When Michael finally went inside, his mother was asleep and he was grateful. He didn't know how to explain what had just happened, didn't have words for this feeling that was part terror and part exhilaration. He'd taken the job, he'd kissed his boss, he'd potentially started something that could either be the best decision of his life or the most spectacular mistake. Only time would tell which. But for the first time in his 34 years, Michael Torres felt truly, completely, dangerously alive.
The shit hit the fan on Monday morning. Michael arrived at Wellington Tower at 8 a.m. for his official first day, carrying a briefcase his mother had bought him, over his protests, and wearing his new suit. He'd barely slept all weekend, his mind replaying Friday night. The dinner, the kiss, the hours of conversation in Kat's apartment. They texted constantly, careful to keep things professional in case anyone saw. But the subtext in every message was clear. Something had irrevocably changed between them. Samantha met him in the lobby with an expression that immediately set off alarm bells. "Mr. Torres, we need to talk before you go up." "What's wrong?" "This." She handed him her tablet. The headline blazed across the business news site. Wellington CEO's new boy toy. Billionaire hires Uber driver, sparks concerns about judgment. Michael's stomach dropped as he read. The article was brutal. It questioned his qualifications, speculated about his relationship with Kat, and included quotes from unnamed board members expressing concern about Miss Wellington's recent erratic behavior and questionable decision-making. There were photos from Friday night's dinner, showing Michael and Kat leaving together, her hand on his arm. "How did they get these?" Michael demanded. "Marcus Hartman." He had photographers waiting outside the restaurant. "He's been feeding stories to the press all weekend." Samantha's expression was sympathetic, but professional. "Miss Wellington is in emergency meetings with the board right now. It's not going well." Michael took the elevator to 60, his mind racing. The reception area was buzzing with activity, people huddled in corners, whispering, casting glances at him as he passed. He felt like every eye was judging him, weighing him, finding him wanting. His new office was on the 59th floor, spacious, with a view, and absolutely terrifying. Michael had barely set down his briefcase when his desk phone rang. "Mr. Torres, this is Darla from HR. We need you to come down to the 45th floor immediately for processing." The HR meeting was excruciating. Darla, a severe woman in her 50s, walked him through contract details with barely concealed disdain. Every document felt like an accusation. Every question about his background, his qualifications, his relationship with Miss Wellington carried a sharp edge. "You understand," Darla said, sliding a particularly dense document across the desk, "that Wellington Enterprises has strict policies regarding workplace relationships. Any romantic involvement with a superior, particularly with Miss Wellington herself, would be a terminable offense." "I understand," Michael said, signing where indicated while his heart pounded. He and Kat had crossed a line Friday night. If the board found out... Good, because I'll be frank, Mr. Torres, many of us have concerns about your hiring. We'll be watching your performance very closely. One mistake, and you'll be out. It was a threat disguised as procedure, and they both knew it. Michael returned to his office to find an email from Richard Sutherland requesting a meeting to discuss transition protocols. Translation, an opportunity to intimidate him further. Michael was about to decline when another email arrived, this one from Kat. "Conference room A. Now, we need to talk." The conference room was empty, except for Kat, who stood by the window with her back to the door. She looked exhausted, her normally perfect posture slightly slumped. When she heard Michael enter, she turned, and you saw the strain in her eyes. "They're trying to force me out," she said without preamble.
Not officially, they can't, I still control the majority share, but they're making it clear that if I don't reverse several recent decisions, including our hiring, they'll make every day a nightmare. Marcus has already filed a formal complaint about hostile work environment because I reject it as advances. The legal department says it's baseless, but it'll tie us up in litigation for months. Kat, and the press is having a field day. My assistant has fielded 47 interview requests this morning alone, all wanting to know about the Uber driver with the $1 billion kiss. She laughed bitterly. They're making it sound like some kind of fairy tale gone wrong. What do you need? You're not running. After that article, after the board attacks, after everything, you're asking what I need? I told you I'm not going anywhere. She moved closer, and for a moment Michael thought she might kiss him. But she stopped just short, remembering they were in a glass-walled conference room where anyone could see. I need you to keep your head down this week. Do your job, ignore the gossip, and let me handle the board. I'm calling an emergency shareholder meeting on Friday. I'm going to settle this once and for all. How? By reminding them who built this company and who really has the power here. Her expression hardened with determination. But Michael, I have to ask, and I need you to be honest. Are you sure you want to stay? Because it's only going to get worse before it gets better. Your life will be examined. Your mother might be harassed by reporters. Everything you do will be questioned. And our whatever this is between us, we'll have to keep it completely private. No dates, no public appearances together, nothing that could be used against either of us. Can you live with that? Michael thought about his conversation with his mother on Saturday, about Maria's warnings. He thought about the HR meeting, about Darla's barely concealed contempt, about the article painting him as a gold digger, about the board members already positioning to remove him at the first opportunity. And he thought about Friday night, about Kat's laugh when she'd finally relaxed, about the way she'd looked at him when she'd said he was the first real thing she'd had in 15 years, about feeling seen. Truly seen, for the first time in his life. Yes, he said simply. I can live with that. Even if it costs you. Even then. Kat smiled, sad but genuine. I don't deserve you. Sure you do. You just forgot that for a while. They stood there, 3 feet apart, wanting to touch but not daring. Finally, Tat stepped back. Okay, then let's get to work. You have 15,000 employees worth of customer experience to revolutionize, and I have a board to remind why they work for me, not the other way around. The week that followed was the hardest of Michael's life. Every day brought new challenges. Coworkers who'd been friendly suddenly turned cold. Meetings where his ideas were dismissed before he'd finished explaining them. Reports from his department heads that were deliberately incomplete or misleading. And all that through that, the constant buzz of gossip.
Is he really qualified or just sleeping with the boss? I heard he's after her money. She's having a midlife crisis and he's the symptom. Michael endured it by focusing on the work. He reviewed every customer complaint from the past year. He visited 3 different Wellington stores, talking to employees and customers alike. He compiled data on employee satisfaction, turnover rates, customer feedback scores, and he started seeing patterns. Places where small changes could make enormous differences. On Wednesday, he presented his preliminary findings to Kat and the senior leadership team. The room was hostile from the start. Richard Sutherland sat front and center, arms crossed, expression skeptical. Others looked bored or annoyed at having their time wasted. Michael pushed through anyway. He showed them data on how employee morale directly correlated with customer satisfaction. How stores with lower turnover had higher sales, how small investments in employee benefits and training programs had generated measurable returns in other companies. What you're describing is expensive, Richard interrupted, and soft, feel-good initiatives that sound nice but don't move the bottom line. Actually, Michael countered, pulling up another slide, the opposite is true. Companies that prioritize employee satisfaction see an average 23% increase in productivity and the 31% reduction in turnover costs. The initial investment pays for itself within 18 months. Numbers can be manipulated to say anything, Marcus Hartman said.
He'd apparently been invited to the meeting, likely by Richard. The question is whether someone with your limited experience can actually execute these ideas, or if you're just good at PowerPoint presentations. Before Michael could respond, Kat cut in. I think Mr. Torres has presented a compelling case backed by solid data. Unless you have specific objections to the methodology, Marcus, I suggest we table the personal attacks and focus on the substance. The meeting ended without resolution, but Michael knew he'd held his own. More importantly, he'd shown Kat's critics that he wasn't just some charity case. He actually had ideas worth considering. That night, Michael got a text from Kat. Rooftop, 10 p.m. Use the service elevator. The rooftop of Wellington Tower was technically off limits after hours, but Kat had access to everything. When Michael arrived, he found her sitting on a bench near the edge, the city spread out below like a field of stars. She changed from her business suit into jeans and a sweater, the first time Michael had seen her in casual clothes. She looked younger, more vulnerable. Hey, he said, sitting beside her. Hey yourself. She leaned into him slightly, and he put his arm around her shoulders. You did good today. Really good. Richard hates that. I noticed. He looked like he wanted to throw me off this roof. Don't give him ideas. She was quiet for a moment. Michael, there's something I need to tell you about Friday's shareholder meeting. Okay. I'm going to give them an ultimatum. Either they support my vision for the company, including all my recent decisions, or I'll consider offers to buy me out. She felt Michael tense. I know, it's nuclear, but I'm done playing defense. I built this company. I own the controlling share. If they don't want to support my leadership, then they can find another CEO. And if they call your bluff, it's not a bluff. There are 3 different firms that would pay premium prices to acquire Wellington Enterprises. I'd walk away with enough money to never work again, and the board knows it. She turned to look at him. But here's the thing. If I win, if I get them to back down, we still have to be careful. So careful. Because they'll be looking for any excuse to prove I made the wrong choice. About the company direction. About you. And if you lose? Then I walk away. Start something new. Smaller maybe, but mine. She took his hand. And I'd want you with me if you were willing. Michael's throat tightened. You'd give up your company? Everything you built? I'd give up a company that doesn't share my values, that treats people like numbers on a spreadsheet, that thinks quarterly profits matter more than human dignity. She squeezed his hand. You helped me remember what my father taught me, that success without kindness is just cruelty with better PR. And if Wellington Enterprises can't be that kind of company, then it's not mine anymore anyway. You're serious. Completely. Terrifying, isn't it? A week ago, I would have fought to the death to keep this company exactly as it was. Now, I'm willing to burn it all down to build something better. What changed? You, Kat said simply. Me? You showed me what matters. That night in your car, you treated a stranger with more kindness than most people in my world show their closest friends. You bought bandages and coffee with your own money, not because you expected anything, but because you saw someone hurting. That's rare, Michael. So rare. I'd forgotten it even existed. She touched my face gently. And then you walked into my world, this cutthroat, cynical, money-obsessed world, and you didn't change. You stayed you. You stood up to Richard, to Marcus, to everyone who said you didn't belong. Not with arrogance, but with quiet dignity. That strength I'd forgotten existed too. Michael leaned into her touch. I'm scared, he admitted, of failing you, of not being enough for this world. You're already more than enough. The question is whether this world is enough for you. Kat kissed him softly, a promise and a question all at once. Whatever happens Friday, whatever the board decides, I want you to know something. Meeting you changed my life.
You gave me back parts of myself I thought were gone forever. And whatever comes next, I don't regret a single moment. I don't either. They sat together on that rooftop for hours, holding each other, talking about everything and nothing. Michael told him about his childhood, about his father leaving, about watching his mother work herself to exhaustion to keep him fed and clothed. Kat told him about building her company from nothing, about the loneliness of success, about how many times she'd wanted to quit but couldn't because too many people depended on her. And slowly, in that protected space above the city, they stopped being the billionaire CEO and the former Uber driver. They were just Michael and Kat, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and decided to fight for something real in a world that often felt fake.
The week crawled toward Friday. Michael worked 18-hour days, finalizing his proposal for restructuring customer experience protocols. Kat was in constant meetings, preparing for the shareholder confrontation. They stole moments when they could. A coffee break in her office, a late-night text, one more rooftop meeting where they just held each other and didn't talk about the looming deadline. On Thursday night, Michael's mother called him into the living room. She'd been watching the news. "Mijo, come see this." The television showed a financial news program. The host was discussing Wellington Enterprises, and Michael's face appeared on screen, a photo from the restaurant, caught mid-laugh at something Kat had said. Sources close to the company say Wellington's board is increasingly concerned about CEO Catherine Wellington's relationship with recently hired employee Michael Torres, the host intoned. Tomorrow's emergency shareholder meeting is expected to address these concerns, with some board members pushing for Wellington's resignation. "They're saying you're the reason she might lose her company," Maria said quietly. "I know, Mom. Are you sure about this? About her? Because if she loses everything because of you, she won't lose anything because of me. She's choosing to fight for something better." Michael sat beside his mother. "I love her, Mom. I know it's fast, I know it's crazy, but I do. And she feels the same way. Isn't that worth fighting for?" Maria studied her son's face for a long moment. Then she smiled, sad but accepting. "Your father left when you were 6. Do you remember what I told you that night? You said that love means staying, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And you've done that for me every day since. Worked yourself to exhaustion, sacrificed your dreams, stayed by my side through cancer and fear and uncertainty." Maria took his hands. "But Mijo, you deserve someone who stays for you too, who fights for you the way you've fought for everyone else your whole life. Is she that person?" Michael thought about Kat standing up to Marcus, defending his hiring, willing to walk away from her company rather than compromise her values. Thought about her voice when she'd said he was the first real thing she'd had in 15 years. "Yes," he said, "she is." "Then I'm proud of you, whatever happens tomorrow." Friday morning dawned cold and clear. Michael dressed in his best suit, kissed his mother goodbye, and drove to Wellington Tower. The building was different today. Television trucks lined the street, reporters positioned at every entrance. The business press had caught wind of the shareholder meeting's significance. This wasn't just corporate drama, this was a referendum on how modern companies should be run, on whether humanity had any place in billion-dollar boardrooms. Security escorted Michael through a side entrance to avoid the press gauntlet. Inside, the atmosphere was electric with tension. Employees whispered in clusters. Board members swept past with grim expressions. And somewhere above, Kat was preparing for the fight of her professional life. The shareholder meeting was held in the largest conference room on the 60th floor, a space that could hold 200 people. Michael wasn't technically required to attend, but Kat had insisted. "If they're going to judge my decisions, you should be there. We face this together." Michael took a seat in the back as shareholders filed in, a mix of board members, institutional investors, and smaller shareholders. Richard Sutherland sat front and center, flanked by 3 other board members Michael recognized as his allies. Marcus Hartman sat nearby, wearing a satisfied smile that made Michael's blood boil. At exactly 10 a.m., Kat entered. She wore a charcoal power suit, her hair pulled back severely,
every inch, the CEO. But Michael saw the tension in her shoulders, the tightness around her eyes. This was costing her, even if she'd never show it. "Thank you all for coming," Kat began, standing at the front of the room without notes. "I know there's been significant concern about recent decisions I've made regarding Wellington Enterprises. Today, I'm going to address those concerns directly. Then I'm going to give you all the choice about the future direction of this company." She pulled up a presentation on the screen behind her. 15 years ago, I started Wellington Enterprises with $10,000 borrowed from 3 different credit cards. I worked 100-hour weeks. I slept on the office floor. I did whatever it took to build something successful. Photos flashed across the screen. A younger Kat in a tiny office. The first store. Early employees. Today, we have 1,500 stores across the country. 15,000 employees. $4 billion in annual revenue. By every traditional metric, we're a massive success. Richard started to speak, but Kat raised a hand. "I'm not finished. Yes, we're successful by traditional metrics, but what about the metrics that matter? Employee satisfaction is 32%, well below industry average. Turnover is at 43%, costing us millions annually in training and recruitment. Customer complaints have increased 18% year over year. And last week, I learned that one of our warehouse workers died of a heart attack at his station. He was 52 years old. He'd been working 16-hour shifts for 3 weeks straight because we're chronically understaffed." The room fell silent. Kat's voice shook slightly. His name was David Chen. He had 2 daughters, and the last thing he did before he died was scan a package because he was terrified that if he stopped working, he'd be fired. She pulled up another slide, a photo of a smiling man with his family. "This is what success looks like by our current metrics. A dead employee who was so afraid of losing his job that he worked himself to death. And I'm done pretending that's acceptable." Richard found his voice. "Miss Wellington, with all due respect, one tragic incident doesn't mean—" "It's not one incident." Kat's voice cracked like a whip. "It's dozens, hundreds, thousands of small cruelties we commit every day in the name of efficiency and profit margins. Employees afraid to call in sick. Parents missing their kids' school events because we don't offer flexible scheduling. People working multiple jobs because we pay minimum wage and call it competitive compensation. When did we decide that this was okay? When did we decide that human dignity was less important than quarterly earnings?" She took a breath, steadying herself. 2 weeks ago, I had a moment of clarity. I was at a charity gala wearing a $15,000 dress, writing checks to help the less fortunate, while 15,000 of my own employees struggled to make rent. The hypocrisy was staggering. So I left, and in leaving, I met someone who reminded me why I started this company in the first place. Kat's eyes found Michael's across the room. Michael Torres showed me what leadership actually looks like. It looks like seeing people's humanity even when they can't show you their best face. It looks like choosing kindness even when it costs you something. It looks like treating every person, regardless of their position or status, with dignity and respect. These aren't soft skills or nice-to-haves. They're the foundation of sustainable success. She pulled up Michael's proposal. Mr. Torres spent his first week analyzing our operations and found that small investments in employee welfare, better benefits, flexible scheduling, living wages would actually increase profitability by reducing turnover and improving productivity. This isn't charity. This is good business. And it's the right thing to do. Which brings me to why I hired him. Not because of any personal relationship, though the press has speculated endlessly. I hired him because he demonstrated better leadership in a 45-minute Uber ride than most executives show in their entire careers. His qualifications aren't on paper, they're in his character. And if this board can't see the value in that, then we have fundamentally different values.
Richard stood. "Miss Wellington,
No one disputes your passion, but passion doesn't drive shareholder value. Strategy does, discipline does, and frankly, your recent decisions suggest emotional compromise rather than sound judgment. The board's concern isn't that you hired Mr. Torres, it's that you did so impulsively as part of what appears to be a personal crisis. You're right, Kat said, and the room gasped. I am having a crisis. I'm having a crisis of conscience. I'm having a crisis of values. I'm questioning whether building a billion-dollar company that treats people like disposable resources is actually an achievement worth celebrating. She walked closer to the board members. But here's what I'm not questioning: my ability to lead this company, my vision for its future, or my decision to surround myself with people who believe that success and humanity aren't mutually exclusive. She pulled up one final slide, a legal document. This is my formal proposal. I'm committing $100 million over the next 2 years to restructuring Wellington Enterprises around employee welfare and customer experience, living wages across all positions, comprehensive benefits, including health care and childcare, flexible scheduling, paid family leave, and a complete overhaul of our management training to prioritize human-centered leadership. The room erupted in murmurs. Richard's face went purple. 100 million? That's insane! The shareholders will never— I'm not asking the shareholders. I'm informing them. I control 51% of this company. I have the authority to make this decision. What I'm asking is whether you support it. Because if you don't, if this board genuinely believes that profit matters more than people, then I'll step down. I'll sell my shares to the highest bidder, likely Marcus's Hartman Industries. You'll have your traditional CEO who'll run things exactly the way you want, and I'll start something new. Something smaller, perhaps, but something that reflects the values I actually believe in. This is blackmail, Marcus said, standing. No, Kat replied calmly. This is leadership. I'm giving you a choice between two futures, one where Wellington Enterprises becomes a model for how corporations can be profitable and humane, or one where I walk away and you explain to the press why you forced out a successful female CEO because she wanted to treat employees better. She smiled without warmth. Your call. The room descended into chaos. Board members arguing, shareholders shouting questions, Richard trying to call for order, and Marcus demanding an immediate vote on Kat's removal. Through it all, Kat stood calm and steady, waiting. Finally, one of the older board members, a woman named Patricia, whom Michael had never seen speak, raised her hand. The room gradually quieted. I've been on this board for 12 years. I watched Catherine build this company from nothing, and I watched as we pushed her to be harder, faster, more ruthless. We rewarded her for treating people like numbers. We told her that compassion was weakness. And now we're angry because she's decided we were wrong? Patricia stood. I vote to support Miss Wellington's proposal, every word of it. Another board member stood, then another. Even some who'd been aligned with Richard. One by one, they voiced their support, some grudging, some enthusiastic, but enough. When the vote was called, Kat won. Not unanimously, Richard and Marcus and 2 others voted against, but decisively. 68% support for the restructuring plan. Richard's face was stony. This is a mistake. You're betting the company's future on feel-good initiatives and an unqualified employee you clearly have an inappropriate relationship with. Actually, Kat said, her voice ice-cold, you're fired. You and any other board member who voted against this proposal. I'm exercising my right as majority shareholder to reconstitute the board with members who share the company's vision. Richard went white. You can't. I can. Check the bylaws. Any board member can be removed with majority shareholder approval, and I have that. You'll receive a generous severance package, but you're done undermining my leadership. She turned to Marcus. And you? I want a formal letter by Monday stating that Hartman Industries is withdrawing its merger proposal,
or I'll go to the press with every detail of how you've harassed me, manipulated the board, and used business pressure to try to coerce a personal relationship." Marcus's confident smile finally cracked. "You wouldn't. Try me. I'm done playing nice with men who think money entitles them to women's bodies and companies." She turned to face the full room. "For anyone else questioning my judgment or my relationship with Michael, yes, I care about him, deeply. But I hired him before that relationship developed, and I'd make the same hiring decision today. He's exactly what this company needs. If that bothers you, there's the door." No one moved. Kat exhaled slowly, and Michael saw her shoulders finally relax. She'd done it. She'd stared down the board, fired her biggest critics, and committed her company to a radically different path, and she'd done it without backing down, without compromising, without apologizing for who she was or who she cared about. The meeting adjourned in a flurry of activity. Lawyers huddled, remaining board members approached Kat with congratulations or concerns, press relations scrambled to prepare statements. And through it all, Michael stayed in his seat, watching the woman he loved command a room full of powerful people with absolute authority. Finally, Kat found him. The conference room had mostly emptied, just a few stragglers gathering papers. She walked to where Michael sat, and for the first time that day, he saw vulnerability return to her face. "So," she said, "that happened." "That was the most terrifying, impressive thing I've ever seen," Michael said, standing. "You were incredible. I was terrified. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the remote for the presentation." "Couldn't tell." "Good." Kat glanced around. They were alone now. "Michael, everything I said in there about hiring you for your qualifications, about our relationship developing after, it's true. But it's also true that I'm falling for you. Hard and fast and completely. And now that the board knows, and now that I've essentially announced it to the shareholders, there's no taking it back. Do you want to take it back? Not even a little, but I need to know you're okay with this. With our relationship being public, with the scrutiny, with people questioning everything we do." Michael thought about the past 2 weeks. The article calling him a boy toy, the hostile coworkers, Darla from HR's thinly veiled threats, the way Richard and Marcus had looked at him like he was something they'd scraped off their shoes. And he thought about Kat's smile when she let her guard down, the way she'd cried in his car, the conversations on the rooftop, the feeling of being truly, completely seen. "I'm okay with it," Michael said. "More than okay. I'm all in, Kat. Whatever comes next." Kat's face transformed into pure joy, and then, right there in the conference room, where she'd just won the battle for her company's soul, she kissed him, not carefully or cautiously, but thoroughly, like she'd been waiting to do this publicly for weeks. When they broke apart, Kat laughed. "There goes any remaining doubt about our relationship." "Good," Michael said, pulling her close again. "I'm tired of hiding."
They left Wellington Tower together through the main entrance, where reporters shouted questions and cameras flashed. Kat held Michael's hand the whole way, making a statement without words. "This is real, and I'm not ashamed." That night, sitting in Michael's modest apartment with his mother, the three of them watched the news coverage together. The headlines were split. Half praised Kat's bold restructuring plan, half focused on the billionaire's romantic gamble. But underneath the gossip, something was shifting. Other CEOs were being asked why they didn't prioritize employee welfare like Wellington. Business schools were debating whether Kat's approach could be a new model. Employees at Wellington stores were posting on social media about how hopeful they felt for the first time in years. "You did this," Kat said to Michael, her head on his shoulder. "You started this change." "We did it together," Michael corrected. Maria smiled at them from her chair. "You know what? I think your father would have liked you, Catherine. He always said the best people were the ones willing to fight for what's right, even when it cost them something." "I would have liked him too," Kat said sincerely. Later, when Maria had gone to bed, Kat and Michael sat on the small balcony of his apartment, looking out at the city. It wasn't the view from Wellington Tower, but somehow it felt more real, more theirs. "I have a question, and I need you to be honest.
Always. Do you ever regret it, accepting that ride request, everything that came after? Michael thought about his life 2 weeks ago. Predictable, safe, lonely, and his life now, chaotic, public, terrifying, but also exhilarating and full and connected to someone who saw him, really saw him. Not for a second, he said. Best decision I ever made. Even though your face is all over the news, even though people are dissecting your entire life, even though. He turned to her. Kat, for 34 years, I thought I knew what mattered. Work hard, take care of family, don't cause trouble. And those things do matter. But you taught me that there's more. That connection matters. That fighting for something you believe in matters. That love, real, terrifying, all-in love, matters most of all. Kat's eyes filled with tears. I love you, Michael Torres. I know it's fast, I know it's complicated, but I do. I love you too, Michael said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. You and your crazy plans to revolutionize corporate America. All of it. They kissed on that balcony as the city lights twinkled around them. Two people from different worlds who'd found each other in the most unlikely way. And for the first time in either of their lives, they both felt like they were exactly where they belonged. 6 months later, Michael stood in front of 500 Wellington Enterprises employees at the company's first annual Humanity in Business conference. His confidence had grown. He'd earned his position through countless 18-hour days, innovative programs that were actually working, and undeniable results. Employee satisfaction had jumped to 78%. Turnover had dropped to 15%. And somehow, miraculously, profits had increased by 12%. When Miss Wellington hired me, Michael told the crowd, a lot of people said I wasn't qualified. They were right. I wasn't qualified in the traditional sense. I didn't have an MBA or corporate experience. But I had something else. I knew what it felt like to be invisible, to work multiple jobs and still worry about making rent, to be treated like a number on a spreadsheet instead of a human being. He paused. And once I remembered my humanity, I couldn't forget yours. In the front row, Kat watched with obvious pride. Beside her sat Maria Torres, healthy now, her cancer in remission after treatments Kat's insurance had covered. On Maria's other side sat Patricia and 3 new board members who had replaced Richard's faction. After the presentation, as employees mingled and shared stories of how the new policies had changed their lives, Kat pulled Michael aside. There's someone I want you to meet, she said, leading him to a woman in her 20s holding a toddler. This is Sarah Chen, David Chen's daughter. Michael's throat tightened. David Chen, the warehouse worker who died at his station, whose story had catalyzed Kat's shareholder meeting speech. Mr. Torres, Sarah said, tears in her eyes, thank you. The memorial fund you established, the college scholarship for my sister, the new safety protocols, my father would be so grateful. I'm sorry we didn't do it sooner, I said honestly. Your father deserved better from us. He did. But what you and Miss Wellington are building now, it means his death wasn't meaningless. You're making sure no one else's parent dies because they're afraid to stop working. She squeezed his hand. Thank you for seeing us, for remembering we're human. After she left, Michael turned to Cap. How do you do this? Carry the weight of knowing people suffered because we didn't act sooner. By making sure we act now, Kat said simply. And by remembering that every policy change, every new benefit, every training program we implement, it's not just data on a spreadsheet. It's Sarah's father. It's your mother. It's real people whose lives we can actually improve. She took his hand. That's what you taught me, and it's why I love you. They'd been careful about public affection at work, conscious of the scrutiny. But 6 months in, with undeniable results backing up their relationship, people had mostly stopped gossiping. Kat was still the CEO, Michael had proven his worth as director, and their relationship was simply a fact everyone had accepted. That evening, Kat drove them to a destination she wouldn't reveal. They ended up at a small house in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing like Kat's penthouse, but charming in its ordinariness. What's this? Michael asked as Kat unlocked the door. I bought it last week. 3 bedrooms, small yard, normal person house. She smiled nervously. I was thinking maybe we could live here together. Turn the 3rd bedroom into a space for your mom when she visits. Build something that feels like an actual home.
Michael looked around the empty house, imagining it filled with furniture they picked out together, with photos and memories in everyday life. You'd really leave the penthouse for this? I'd leave everything for you. Haven't you figured that out yet? Kat moved closer. Michael, you showed me what actually matters. Not the penthouses or the private jets or the power. The connection, the humanity, the simple act of coming home to someone who sees you, really sees you, and loves what they find. She pulled a small box from her pocket, which is why I wanted to ask you— Wait, Michael interrupted, pulling out his own small box. They stared at each other, then burst out laughing. You too? Kat asked. Apparently great minds think alike. They opened the boxes simultaneously. Michael's ring for Kat was simple, a platinum band with a small diamond, nothing ostentatious. Kat's ring for Michael was equally understated, a brushed silver band with an inscription inside. You saw me. I was going to plan some elaborate proposal, helicopter, fancy restaurant, the whole thing. But that felt fake. This, standing in an empty house that could become our home, this feels real. I was going to propose in the Uber where we met. Actually, I rented it for the night from the company. That's incredibly sweet and incredibly dorky. I contain multitudes. Michael took the ring from Kat's box. Catherine Wellington, you came into my life at 3 a.m, bleeding and broken and more beautiful than you knew. You reminded me that taking risks is worth it, that love is worth fighting for, that two people from completely different worlds can build something real if they're willing to work for it. Will you marry me? Yes, Kat said without hesitation. Then, but I need to ask you something first. Are you sure, really truly sure? Because marrying me means a lifetime of scrutiny. It means our kids, if we have them, growing up in the public eye. It means never quite escaping the narrative of the billionaire and the Uber driver. He slid the ring on her finger. I'm sure, because that narrative, it's not the whole story. The whole story is two people who saw each other's humanity and decided that was more valuable than status or wealth or what anyone else thought. That's the story I want to tell our kids someday. That's the story I want to live. Kat kissed him, and it felt like coming home. They spent hours in that empty house planning their future. A small wedding, just family and close friends, maybe expanding Wellington's humanity initiatives to other companies, perhaps starting a foundation focused on workers' rights. Definitely building a life that prioritized connection over achievement, love over success. I have one condition, Michael said, as they sat on the floor of what would become their bedroom. Your mom, your biological family, have you reconnected? Kat's expression complicated. My mother passed away 5 years ago. We were estranged. She never forgave me for choosing business over family time. Pain flickered across her face. She was right. I missed so much chasing success. I can't get that time back. But you can make different choices now, Michael said gently. You can build the family you want, not the one dictated by corporate demands. Is that your condition? That we prioritize family? That we prioritize us, whatever that looks like. 3 months later, they married in a small ceremony at the house they'd bought together. Maria sat in the front row, healthy and beaming. Patricia and the new board members attended. Several Wellington employees came, including Sarah Chen, whose presence meant more to Michael and Kat than any celebrity guest could have.
Marcus Hartman sent a surprisingly gracious note wishing them well. Richard Sutherland did not. The media covered it, of course. Billionaire marries former Uber driver in Mana ceremony, ran in business sections nationwide. But the tone had shifted. Now the articles talked about Wellington Enterprises' revolutionary employee policies, about the measurable success of prioritizing humanity in business. Michael and Kat had become a symbol, not of class differences, but of what's possible when people choose connection over convention. A year after that, Kat stood before a congressional committee testifying about corporate responsibility and employee welfare. Michael sat beside her, now vice president of human capital, a position he'd earned through results that couldn't be questioned. The question isn't whether companies can afford to treat employees humanely. The question is whether we can afford not to, because the cost of our previous approach in turnover, in productivity loss, and human suffering was astronomical. We just weren't measuring it. She glanced at Michael.
My husband once told me that success without kindness is just cruelty with better PR. I built a billion-dollar company believing the opposite, and I was wrong. The most successful thing I ever did was remember that businesses are made of people, and people deserve dignity, respect, and the basic understanding that their humanity matters more than any profit margin. The testimony helped spark a national conversation. Other companies began adopting Wellington's model, business schools revised their curricula. Slowly, painstakingly, the definition of corporate success started to shift. 5 years after that rainy night in an Uber, Michael and Kat sat in their backyard, modest but theirs, watching their 2-year-old daughter play. Maria lived in the converted garage apartment, still cancer-free, spending her days spoiling her granddaughter. "Do you ever think about how different our lives would be if I declined that ride?" Michael asked. "All the time," Kat admitted. "I think about how close I came to losing myself completely. How one decision, yours to accept, mine to be vulnerable, changed everything." "Do you regret any of it? The board fights, the restructuring costs, the public scrutiny?" Kat looked at their daughter, then at Michael, then at the simple house they'd filled with love and laughter and everyday chaos. Not even a little. All of this is success, real success, the kind that matters. What about Wellington Enterprises, the empire you built? It's not an empire anymore. It's a company that treats people well and does good in the world. That's better than any empire. She leaned into Michael. "You know what my father used to say? Build something that makes the world a little less cruel." I thought I was doing that by building a successful company. But I was wrong. I was making the world more cruel, just in expensive packaging. And now? Now I'm actually doing what he asked, because you showed me how. She kissed him gently. Best Uber ride I ever took. Best passenger I ever picked up. Their daughter ran over, demanding to be lifted, and Michael scooped her up. As the sun set over their modest backyard, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, the three of them sat together, a family built on an impossible foundation that had somehow become the most solid thing in their lives. The headlines would continue. The business analysts would keep debating whether Wellington's model was sustainable. The gossip columns would still occasionally reference the billionaire and her Uber driver husband. But none of that mattered anymore. Because in the end, they had found what most people spend their whole lives searching for. Someone who saw them completely and loved what they found. Someone who reminded them that humanity, messy, complicated, beautiful humanity, was the point of everything. And that ride through the rain, that 45-minute journey that changed 2 lives completely, that became the story they told their daughter every night before bed. Not as a fairy tale, but as a reminder that kindness matters, that seeing people's humanity matters, and that sometimes the most ordinary decisions lead to the most extraordinary lives. The end.
What began as a simple act of kindness, opening a car door for a stranger in the rain, rippled outward to transform a company, challenge an industry, and remind us all of a fundamental truth. We are human first. Everything else second. Michael and Catherine's story isn't really about a billionaire and an Uber driver. It's about 2 people who were brave enough to see each other's humanity when the world told them to see only status, wealth, and difference. It's about choosing connection over convention, kindness over profit, and love over all the very good reasons not to risk your heart. In a world that increasingly measures success by followers, bank accounts, and titles, their story asks a different question. What does it mean to succeed at being human? What does it cost to build empires while forgetting the people who make them possible? And what becomes possible when we remember that every person we encounter, regardless of their circumstances, deserves to be seen, valued, and treated with dignity? The real message isn't that love conquers all,
Though love matters immensely, the real message is simpler and more challenging. Treat every person as if their humanity matters, because it does. Buy the coffee, offer the kindness, see the person behind the appearance. Do it not because you might fall in love, not because you'll be rewarded, but because it's the right thing to do. And maybe, just maybe, that simple choice will change not just one life, but ripple outward to change how we all see each other and ourselves. Because in the end, we're all just people trying to navigate this complicated, beautiful, painful world. And the least we can do, the very least, is treat each other like we're all worth saving. Even when it rains. Especially when it rains. The end. Up next, 2 more incredible stories are waiting for you right on your screen. If you enjoyed this one, you won't want to miss these. Just click to watch and don't forget to subscribe.